Throughout time, people across the world told each other tales of how they came to be, of heroes and monsters, romance and tragedy, death and rebirth. Mythology helped shape the ancient world, explaining the unexplainable. This is Mythology Unleashed. Following the end of the American Civil War, and prior to the beginning of the Great War, came one of the most storied and romanticized times in American history: the Wild West. The folklore of the American West was unique in that even real-life figures and real-life events could become mythologized to epic proportions, rivaling even the tales of King Arthur or the epics of Greek mythology. It was a time of outlaws and gunslingers, lost treasure, abandoned settlements, even ghosts and monstrous beasts. This program will detail a handful of the most fabled, most far-fetched, and most gripping legends of the Wild West. Our first legend concerns the stolen loot of infamous outlaws Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid. On April 21st, 1897, the two rogues and their gang the Wild Bunch pulled off a train robbery in Castlegate, Utah, stealing approximately $7,000 of payroll cash meant for the employees of the Pleasant Valley Coal Company. The outlaws headed south into the canyons and deserts of Utah, losing the authorities and a lynch mob near North Spring Canyon. The Wild Bunch was heading to their fabled hideout, Robber's Roost, located roughly 50 miles east of Hanksville, in rough and rugged terrain, not so easily navigated by outsiders. According to legend, the Wild Bunch's loot from the Castlegate robbery, and potentially dozens of other larceny and grand theft jobs, was buried or otherwise hidden somewhere around Robber's Roost. To this very day, none of the money has ever been recovered. Were it to be discovered and adjusted for today's currency, the Wild Bunch's hidden treasure could potentially be worth millions. But not all stories of lost treasure and hidden gold are tied to scoundrels on horseback. Some are a result of the actions of seafaring scoundrels, such as the pirate gold of Neahkahnie Mountain. As the legend goes, a Spanish galleon sailed into Nehalem Bay on the coast of Oregon. When the pirates landed, the crew walked to a random spot, dug a deep pit, and dropped a massively heavy chest into the hole. The cutthroat crew then dropped a fresh corpse on top of the treasure chest, perhaps a captive or a sacrificed member of the crew, before burying the loot. Unbeknownst to the pirates, they were being spied on by a hunting party of the Clatsop people, the natives of the region. Due to the number of pirates and their firepower, the hunting party opted to simply observe as these visitors concluded their business. More than 100 years later, the region would become overrun with white explorers, including Lewis and Clark, members of the Hudson's Bay Company, fur trappers, mountaineers, and Captain Vancouver, who through their interactions with the Clatsops learned of the legend of buried pirate treasure, but were warned of a curse surrounding the area, and of a ghost that guards it fervently. But no Native American superstition could diffuse the curiosity and greed of treasure seekers, and a number of unsuccessful ventures took place for the pirates' gold. In the 1870s, a man named Pat Smith claimed to have found rocks carved with arrows, crosses, and initials, but no sign of any treasure. Thomas McKay, one of the earliest settlers to the area and employee of the Hudson's Bay Company, would often hike along the bluffs of Nehalem Bay with a shovel in hand. One day he abruptly quit his job and left the area, but came into notable wealth some years later, though he never disclosed just how he came into the money. Did he find the treasure? Or is it still out there? Everyone knows of the Headless Horseman said to haunt the woods of Sleepy Hollow, New York. But another Headless Horseman is said to ride through Texas, El Muerto. As the legend goes, El Muerto was once a notorious Mexican thief named Vidal, who lived during the mid-1800s. One evening, Vidal succeeded in stealing a vast number of cattle and horses belonging to a Texas ranger. The ranger tracked Vidal down and beheaded the thief, lashing his headless corpse to his horse's saddle, and his disembodied head to the saddle's pommel, before letting the horse run free through the region with its carcass cargo. After riding through the wilds for some time, Vidal's corpse was eventually laid to rest, now heavily riddled with bullet holes and native arrows. But soon reports began to circulate of a headless horseman riding about the land between the Nueces River and the Rio Grande, crying out in the night and scaring locals. It would seem that infamous thief Vidal had risen from the grave as a vengeful spirit, a frightening specter who was given a new name, El Muerto, the Headless One. Another chilling creature of the Wild West is the Banshee of the Badlands. Badlands National Park in South Dakota is a labyrinth of rocky formations that stretches for miles and miles. And throughout this stone maze, the cries of the Banshee echo, chilling even the bravest of souls to their marrow. Unlike the Banshee of Celtic mythology, whose presence and mournful wails are said to herald the death of someone, the Banshee of the Badlands is said to be the foreboding spirit of a woman killed by Watchdog Butte. If any who for good or ill will happen to pass the haunted butte at night, they will see the rocks alight with phosphor flashes, and the Banshee would sweep upon them. As if wishing to speak, or as if waiting for a question to be asked, she would stand beside them in an attitude of appeal. But if asked what she wants, she would flail her arms aloft and emit a shriek that would deafen all within a mile of the cursed place. The Banshee would then disappear, and an instant later be seen wringing her hands on her hilltop. Cattle would not graze near the haunted butte, and the locals know to stay clear, for the word has never been spoken that will quell the Banshee of the Badlands. Death Valley, nestled in the Mojave Desert of eastern California, is among the hottest, driest, and harshest environments on the planet, and it is said to be the location of a hidden subterranean city and a secluded race of people inhabiting it. The Paiute peoples of the region refer to this city as the Kingdom of Shinawav, a sacred place whose name translates to Spirit Land or Ghost Land. As its name would imply, this city was where the deceased would spend eternity. According to the legend, thousands of years ago, a grief-stricken Paiute chieftain had lost his wife and ventured into a tunnel that led to the enchanted city, so that he may reunite with his wife. Though he had failed in his mission, he went on to tell the story of the wondrous kingdom of Shinawav. As the legend of the subterranean city spread, many ventures have been made to find it and lay claim to the discovery, and perhaps any treasure found within. There have even been a few to claim that they have found the underground caverns in Death Valley, filled to the brim with vast treasures of silver and gold ornaments, and mummified remains of people, animals, extinct megafauna, and even giant humanoids. To this day, there have been no successful ventures to find the hidden city of Death Valley, nor has anyone found any indisputable evidence of an underground chamber of treasure or mummies, let alone a city with a thriving population. And to search extensively for it is further complicated by the valley's deadly environment. Eldorado Canyon in Colorado is a haven for ghostly activity, and not just spirits of deceased people, but animals as well, namely, the Hell Dogs. During a time when the area acted as a mining colony, many prospectors kept dogs at their claim sites to protect their property, trained to attack at the slightest trespass by strangers. The dogs were made to be feral and extremely vicious. Many of these dogs would end up being killed by rivals, left chained at the claim site to die, or released into the wild when the gold played out and the miners left the area. But in the years that followed, numerous tales of sightings of these many spectral hounds have been told by exploring visitors and locals alike. A few even tell of being attacked by these ferocious canine apparitions. One story relates how two brothers went exploring in one of the abandoned mines of the canyon. They stumbled upon canine skeletal remains and a rusted iron chain, but no ghost dogs to be found. That very night, the air grew thick and hard to breathe, and in a heartbeat, the two brothers were set upon by the Hell Dogs. The sound of paws circling the campsite, scratching noises from the mine shaft, and the chain rattling echoed through the night. One of the brothers pointed a flashlight toward the chain where scratch marks and bloodstains could be seen on the surface of the rock. Suddenly the chain dropped, and one of the brothers felt something brush against his leg, before both made a mad dash for their car. As the brothers drove off out of the canyon, they could still hear the wild panting and canine footsteps keep pace with them for several miles. Our final legend of this program is the legendary cowboy, Pecos Bill. While much of what is known today about Pecos Bill comes from the works of author Edward O'Reilly, it is believed that he originated as a figure of campfire tales told by cowboys and ranch hands of the late 19th century, one who came to personify the spirit of the American West. Legend has it that the child who would grow up to become Pecos Bill was born in the 1830s, the youngest of 18 children of a Texas pioneer, and so tough that he used a Bowie knife as a teething ring. As a toddler, he fell out of his family's wagon upon crossing the Pecos River and was swept away by the current, only to be rescued by a loving pack of coyotes. When Bill eventually returned to civilization, he became a renowned ranch hand, credited with inventing the branding iron, the lasso, cattle whispering, and many other methods geared toward frontier work. Many stories of Pecos Bill featured tales of Herculean feats such as riding a tornado, wrangling an entire herd at one time, using a rattlesnake as a lasso, and harnessing the Rio Grande to water his ranch. Though much of his legend comes from written works, arguably no other figure embodies the legends and folklore of the Wild West than Pecos Bill. It should come as no surprise that one of the most romanticized and mythologized periods of American history would produce a veritable goldmine of legends and myths. The Wild West has produced some of the most fabled stories in American folklore, from hidden subterranean cities to ghosts and wailing spirits, lost treasure, and cowboys who can lasso a twister. These stories have stood the test of time, resonating with countless generations of storytellers and eager listeners. To those looking to hear more tales of the Wild West, saddle on up and venture forth into the great wide yonder.